Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Knowing, a movie from 2009. So this is a retro review. This movie is rated PG-13 with a runtime of 2 hours and 1 minute. I went back to check out the Rotten Tomatoes scores. The critics are at 34% and the audience is at 42%. This movie's pretty low. I enjoyed the film more than both of these scores. So I was looking for something to watch, and I saw that this came on the recently added to HBO Max. And I'm a big fan of Nicolas Cage, and this is one of the films of his that I had not seen. So let's talk about the people behind the camera. We'll talk a little bit about the premise of this film, and then I'll get into what I thought of this film. So this movie is directed by Alex Proyas, with written by Ryan Douglas Pearson, Julie Snowden, and Styles White. In this film, 50 years after he was buried in a time capsule, a schoolgirl's cryptic document falls into the hands of Caleb Kostler, the son of Professor John Kostler, Nicolas Cage. John figures out that the encoded message accurately lists every major disaster from the past 5 decades and predicts 3 future calamities. One, a global cataclysm. When his warnings fall on deaf ear, John enlists the help of prophetic authors, daughters, and granddaughter to try to avert the ultimate disaster. This movie's a little convoluted. I will say, I will definitely admit that. This movie stars Nicolas Cage as John Kostler, who we follow throughout the film, who is an MIT professor of like astrophysics, like really smart dude. Also, we have Rose Byrne as Diana, who's the daughter of the girl that originally wrote down all the numbers. We have Chandler Canterbury as Caleb, who's Nicolas Cage's son. Larry Robinson as Abby, who's Diana's daughter. And we have Ben Mendelsohn in a role that I was not even aware that he was in, as Phil, who is a colleague of Nicolas Cage from the university. So right off the bat, like I said, I was looking for something fun to watch. This is something that was kind of a blind spot for me in the Nicolas Cage filmography. But Knowing is a film that just grabbed my audience and my attention. I mean, from the opening scene, like the cold open of the time capsule being put down 50 years ago, everything that's going on with Lucinda, who's the student that writes down all the numbers. I thought that was all really interesting. It all kind of really leads to a fun mystery that has to literally be dug up and brought out to the surface. And of course, it ultimately falls in the hands of Nicolas Cage. So it almost feels like a bit of a mix of National Treasure with some signs and just some of the Mothman prophecies, like all those kind of vibes that I feel like in the late 2000s were kind of very popular. I can see why Nicolas Cage is the was picked for the role here. I think he can play somebody who's capable but also desperate at times. Throughout the film, we find out that Cage's wife in the film passed away, and then he discovers that she passed away in one of the events that was predicted in here. So yeah, the film's pacing is very quick and intense. The audience just kind of has to follow Kessler as he unravels this mystery. Right, we're really much there with him at every beat of this process, and we start uncovering the disturbing implications of what's going on. They also set up. I feel like the movie definitely lets you know the answer almost up front, but it's not the full answer of the mystery that gets solved at the end. And we'll talk about the end because I feel like that's probably the most divisive part. Um, but it's I really enjoyed the mystery, and I enjoyed Cage's performance as he was becoming this obsessed character. With while the stakes got higher and higher, because you have a character who, at first, he himself does not believe, but then he finally is on board with this mystery. But now he has to also convince the people around him, his family, his colleagues. I love the dynamic between his character and Ben Mendelsohn's character. Like you can tell that they're friends, but and Phil, who's Ben Mendelsohn, understands that Nicolas Cage is going through some difficult times and he's still processing a lot of what's going on with his life. Um, but there's also so much that he can kind of put up with as a friend, and back and forth, right? Because Nicolas Cage is not the easiest character to deal with. We also see a lot of dysfunctionality with Nicolas Cage's family, like his sister and his parents. And I think the film wants to pose some questions that may seem a little bit simple, but I think overall, for me, at least, laid out the theme of what was happening in this film. Um, so as the events of the film begin to escalate to the most extreme scenarios, including plane crashes, train derailments, natural disaster, like the film never really loses how serious things are. It could have turned campy, or it could have turned just a little bit goofy, especially with with a character like or an actor like Nick Cage, who sometimes he himself becomes derailed. But I think that's what kept me involved in the story. That the tension kind of kept rising. Um, I saw while I was doing some research for the film that some people were not too happy with the special effects, and I can definitely see that there's a sequence where there's a lot of fire that you can immediately tell it's like CGI fire, and I feel like the performers and the stunt performers there, although I'm sure they were trying, they probably did not yield the best of results for that scene. So I can definitely see how that would lose some people throughout the audience. Um, Also, the film is not without its flaws. Some of the dialogue really feels clunky and a little bit forced from the supporting characters. Um, it's also hard to always get kids to deliver on a performance, but I think the kids on this movie, I think did a good job overall. I mean, especially when you're acting alongside somebody like Cage or even Rose Byrne, who's she's magnificent. I was really glad to see she was part of this movie. Um, and as I mentioned, some of the CGI can really undercut some of the action and some of the seriousness of this film. I would also say, like, as the story progresses, I think the film makes it very clear that it's not going to turn. It's gonna go where it told you. Like, the destination has not changed. It will not change. But I feel like they added an element that was even more fantastical towards the end of the film, and I feel like that's where the ending could be divisive. Like, I took it at face value. I think it's something that, like I said, they had been hinting at from the beginning, and some people may find that unsatisfying. I was okay with it. I think overall it didn't diminish the impact of the film, which was just tense and engaging sci-fi thriller all over the place. Like, I love following the clues. I love how Nicolas Cage would kind of solve these little mysteries, and like I said, the disasters that we experienced throughout the films, I think they were something that just kind of kept bracing the tension. So I'm glad I watched this movie. I think it's a solid entry into not only the Nicolas Cage filmography, but just overall like a sci-fi thriller, especially from what was happening at the time in the late aughts. So with an intriguing mystery and a committed performance from Nicolas Cage and the rest of the cast, while it is not without its flaws, the film remains entertaining, and it kept me invested in its story. So whether you're a fan of Cage or just this genre, I think Knowing is definitely worth checking out. Like I said, at 2 hours, I don't think it overstays its welcome. And yeah, I think it's really those last 15 to 20 minutes that will be the decisive factor of whether whether you got on board with the film or not. Which is, it's a lot to ask for the audience, but I think if you do enjoy it, I think it's going to be worth it. So if you have seen this film, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. It may be a nice way to revisit it, especially, like I said, now that it's on streaming. So, as always, thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. That is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, all that fun stuff here on the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye bye.